A lot of consideration myself in being in the forces, and so I haven't really looked personally at what that could look like for me or someone like me. I know women who have served and fought and men who have served and fought, so my general consensus is, they served, So to me, it's really not that much about it. I guess for me, it would depend person to person, and that would, I guess, it would really create a lot of problems, and I do see that with individualizing someone who's serving so much based on all these different things. Like, I know I'm unqualifiable because I'm tiny. You could shoot a bazooka and I'd go flying,
Well, if you shot a bazooka at me, I'd go flying. That's kind of the purpose of a bazooka. I don't think any of us would survive Oh, you mean if you fired it? Oh, okay.
I do believe that with such a difficult task of serving your country in any sense, I mean, it could be taxing even if you're not in a combatant role.
Sure.
Physically, mentally, psychologically.
I agree.
And so I guess really...
that's why we should individualize it. We should standardize it.
Yeah. I can see, to me, I think it should really be, I guess, gosh. It's cool to be on the spot like this because now I really get to think about it.
Yeah.
I think, I guess there are a lot of people who can't really serve in a combatant role.
Sure.
And so I think generally, there are men who are disabled. There are a lot of different people who can't fight for a lot of different reasons.
Right.
But I think instead of, at least for me personally, instead of worrying about the kind of people we put in, we can focus on how we can make them the best, even if that might mean talking to them and saying, hey, we know you're interested in this, but this might be a better fit. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we can bar them in a combatant sense. But
we're not barring them on a personal level, though. The requirements, if they don't meet them, bar them.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if you can't throw a grenade...
or you can't carry, you can't carry a certain load at the same amount of distance in the same amount of time without, unfortunately, a bone fracture.
Yeah.
You can't do a leg tuck, so we go to a plank. Yeah, no one's discriminating against them if the test is standardized. That's why I think it has to be standardized. And by the way, it is at the end of training. So we do training, we train them, and then you have tests to see if they're fit. So even with training, a lot of women are still not fit, and so we keep lowering those standards. So they're not being disqualified personally. The test is disqualifying them.
Okay.
For the same reason that a man in a wheelchair doesn't mean that you're being ableist if you say, well, you probably shouldn't be out in the front lines. Why? Because you'll be killed.
Yeah.
I don't want him killed.
I think that to eliminate the possibility of combatant alone, just as a baseline, I think could take away opportunity for growth. Because someone could come in maybe not being able to lift, but over time they could develop that ability. Obviously, if you can't lift...
How about once they develop that ability and they pass the test, they can go in? They shouldn't be learning on the job.
If they're given ample time and resources to train in and out of that setting equally, then I believe the test.
There's nothing stopping any woman right now from training up to meet basic requirements. You can do your push-ups, you can do your sit-ups, you can go do your jog with a backpack. You could do your pull-ups on a tree in a park. There's nothing stopping. It's not a lack of resources. It's a biological ceiling.
If they can do it, they can do it.
If they can do it. I agree.
Yeah.
The vast majority of women can't, so we keep lowering the standards, and that's my issue. And certainly with the police force. I think that when we're dealing with people complaining about, in some cases, very justified police brutality, the same reason I support women carrying firearms. Because a firearm makes a woman, like you just said, you're small. You're as strong as a man if you know how to operate a firearm.
I believe I'm as strong as a man in a different capacity.
No, I'm talking about in a physical altercation. There's no way that a man will not overpower you, for example.
Yeah.
It's an average-sized man. But you have a firearm, it equalizes. It's called the great equalizer for a reason, right? In that same capacity, right? In other words, you can use your firearm. If a woman is physically less capable as a cop, she has to use her firearm. That will increase the likelihood of police brutality, let alone, of course, the incidence of violent attacks against women in the police force and their brothers in arms, and it's much higher. So for the same reason that I like women, civilians, to be able to carry firearms, the flip side of that coin is I want female police officers to not have to use their firearms. Unfortunately, it's a biological reality that they do. If they're dealing with a guy my size on PCP, you're going to need to use a gun. And I don't want to see women getting killed and getting beaten up out there.
Yeah.
So, well, I appreciate you sitting down. It was
Jay.
Jay, that's right, Jay.
It's nice talking with you.
I was like, it's not Joe, Jay. Thank you, Jay. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
And maybe we'll be back here sometime and you can let me know what you...
I'm happy to learn.
Yes, go back. Get your pilot's license too. There's not a lot of pilots. There's a real opening right now.
Oh yeah.
No, there really is. And it's a really good field to go into. There's a serious lack of pilots. So private planes, they pay well. I know a wealthy guy who has a plane. He's like, yeah, there are not enough pilots out there. And actually, women make great pilots. That's why I actually had this ready, but we didn't disagree that women in the Air Force actually do incredibly well. Because of how they sustain G-forces sometimes.
Well, what do you know?
Just consider it. I'm just saying, it's an option. If you like flying, it's a potential career.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Now, I don't want to speak out of turn. I think that might have been a change my mind first, in that Jay didn't really seem to have any opinions, at least strong opinions, one way or the other, but was willing to sit down, and I appreciate her willingness to do so, which, by the way, is why we always make all of the references available at louderwithcrowder.com. You can click the link in the description to peruse at will and learn more on this topic. Also, if you enjoy this series and want them to continue, please consider commenting below which topic you'd like to see next on Change My Mind, and hit that like button so that YouTube can throttle this anyway. Okay, next up we have, Anaya. Anaya or Anai?
Anaya.
Anaya, okay. I apologize if I get your name wrong, because I'm horrible with names.
You're fine.
But I'll never forget your face. I have a weird facial recognition software.
I get it. I do the same.
Are you the same way?
Yeah.
Do you remember faces, but the name, like,
Yeah.
I have to, so in my mind I'll go Annihilator, so that then I'll remember your name, but I might accidentally say Annihilator.
I get it. It's okay.
Grab some water here. Anai Steven.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I like your shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
Are you a big AC/DC fan?
I just like the shirt.
Oh, no.
I've heard Back in Black a few times
Okay.
because of movies. I'm very much like a Marvel type person, so.
But what if you wear that shirt and you find out that they're like a white supremacist metal band, like the acid rock band?
Then I
My
would.
point is you don't know.
I don't know. I mean, this is where you kind of like you do your history.
Right,
On
but it
the
sounds to me like
certain-
you haven't done on the AC/DC. They're not, by the way. They
I
seem like
know.
decent people. I'm just saying.
I get it.
It's always a risk.
My dad says the same thing. He's like, you need to research, and I'm like, sometimes okay.
I did it once when I was a kid. I got a Grateful Dead shirt at a thrift store, and I liked it because I had Mr. Saturday, the skeleton with a top hat. And then someone was like, "Hey, Grateful Dead." I was like, "Who's Grateful Dead?" And I went to listen to them, and they sucked. And I was like, "Oh, I can't believe I wore that shirt out in public." So, Anai, I don't know how
Yes.
familiar you are, if at all, with the Change My Mind segments. It's basically designed to hopefully rationalize our positions on seemingly controversial topics. They've been actually pretty friendly today, which is a good thing. I'm really happy about that. So today, let me kind of state my position. I do not believe that women should be in combat roles, meaning roles where they would encounter physical violence, enlisted forces, infantry, or in the police force where they would have to be subduing violent perpetrators.
Okay.
Because it not only is less safe for them, it's less safe for their brothers in arms, and it's less safe for us as a country, the citizens they're sworn to protect. I specifically say women because I support a physical meritocracy, but we have only lowered the standards to allow more women into the military and police force. So that's why I have a problem specifically with women in combat roles who can meet lower physical requirements and still get the same job.
Okay.
If you disagree with that, or you think I missed something, I'd love to hear you. You're welcome to change
I
your
would.
mind.
Do you want me?
I'll just hold it,
Okay.
just because we've had people try and steal them.
Oh, no, I'm
not saying you would,
but I believe that I strongly disagree just based off my family's experience. I have multiple cousins. My grandparents were in the military, so I have both men and women in my family in the military. I don't think that certain regulations or rules that they change now are in benefit of women or men. I think it's in betterment of the troops together as a whole, because you think of them as our military is as one. They don't see, oh, you're black, you're white, or you're a woman or a man. When it comes down to combat, one thing that my grandfather has told me when he was in combat was, he's like, I didn't care who it was.
Right.
I don't care. It'd be like, you're my brother, you're my sister. I'm going to save you and make sure you're okay.
Right.
Regardless of man, woman, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever.
This was your grandfather?
Yes.
Well, I think your grandfather said that because your grandfather sounds like a very decent man.
Well, unfortunately, he has passed away.
Well, he's passed away, but it sounds like a good man.
He was.
Here's the issue. Like you said, it doesn't see color. And as a matter of fact, it's true. It's actually kind of a beautiful thing in the military. It's very mixed as far as demographics. A lot of Black Americans, a lot of Hispanic Americans. However, it's not blind when it applies to women. They can meet far lower PT requirements.
Do you think so?
No, it's absolutely true. So they created separate standards for men and women starting in the 70s. And then recently the Army tried to create a gender-neutral test. Less than 10% of men failed, 65% of women failed. For example, in the Marines, a woman can do half as many pull-ups as a man and get a perfect score. We've eliminated push-ups. We've eliminated pull-ups. We eliminated the leg tuck. We've now moved to the plank because women were not passing. If we're talking about them all as one, my issue is that it's not blind. It is creating a separate, lower standard for women to join the same combat roles. How does that make those out there in the front line safer? To have someone who's less qualified, less capable, but because they're a woman, they get the same spot.
Well, I mean, I think it also kind of depends on like when you come in. Like you have to think about it like, there's a lot of high schools that go straight into the military because that's their one option, or that's the option that they choose. So just as any corporate job would be, like you have your entry level, be like that's kind of the same thing with the military now. For like my cousin, she went in the military, she did her training and everything like that, and she's moved up the ranks.
And she had to meet a far lower physical requirement than a man.
I don't think so. I mean,
No,
I will have to call her and ask her, but I don't believe so.
It's the policy of, is she in the Army?
No.
Which branch is she in?
Air Force.
Air Force. Yeah, it's the policy of Army, Air Force, Marines. They have lower physical standards.
I will have to ask her, but I don't.
Let's assume
think so.
Let's assume that what I'm saying is not untrue. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that, for example, women can meet a much lower physical requirement, and not only physical, but certain mental requirements, reflex requirements, that women can achieve a far lower score, or they even have to meet far lower physical standards. Let's say that's the case. I'm telling you, I'm giving you my word, it is the case with the Marines, it is the case with the Army, it is the case with municipal police forces. So let's assume that's true, that, for example, a man has to do, let's just say 10 pull-ups, and a woman can do 5 or none and achieve the same score. What are your thoughts? Do you think that's right?
I don't think, as far as you debating like the certain requirements, I don't think that that's fair. I think that, I feel like, in my mind, I feel like there should be a basis for everybody.
Same standard.
Same standard.
I agree.
Rather, it's you do 20 push-ups. If you do meet the 20, then hey, you're good.
I agree.
But I don't think it's fair to men or women. Yes. Now to because there are some women who can do 25 push-ups, burpees, and all these types of things, and complete the whole 9 yards.
Very few. That's why we lowered the standards for them.
But
This is absolutely true.
I don't think so, because they're
what you feel on this. I'm sorry. It is absolutely true. The military requirements are far lower for women.
For me, I would have to see the statistics, the writing, every policy that there is to actually understand and see what you're saying. Because I'm the type of person.
But if that is true, you would disagree with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree that there shouldn't be a difference.
Right.
There should be a plain board for everyone to meet the requirements.
Right.
Regardless.
I agree.
But as far as the whole thing of like mental stability and all this type of stuff, I think that is attacking women as just a gender's character. Because yes,
I'm not attacking their character.
I mean, no, but it's just like when I hear people like, well, I don't believe women should be in the military, or I don't believe women should be in combat. I've always heard that, oh, they're emotional, or there's certain like biological factors like, oh, well, they get pregnant. Well,
those are true.
Those are true, but I'm like,
that is an issue.
I mean, but just as men are emotional, men have bad days. The fact they can't get pregnant, but I was like, they can also get injured. So I'm like, for certain things, like.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because women, the bone fracture rate, far higher for women when they're out there in the field. Their disability discharge rate is up in the 60-something% higher than men. And I think percentage of men from the military discharge who get PTSD, it's in the single digits. For women, it's over 10. So it's not an attack on their character. These are statistical realities.
But also it's kind of the fact of not just the combat issue, but it's also the fact of other men in the military taking a stance against that woman. I don't
think that's what it is.
I think
men are animals, and women need to deal with being animals. If they're in a foxhole with animals, they got to be an animal. And women aren't animals.
I think that's where it's we're humans. That's what we're humans. Don't compare anybody to an animal, because we're not.
I'm saying in wartime,
I get it.
You need to be a beast. Put it
I
that
get
way.
it, but I'm just saying, like, I don't think that's a correct way to describe or build a conversation of, well, war is war. War is a mental game, physiological game of combat strategies, all that. So you have to be smart, you have to think quick, and I get it. Yes, there's a physical factor. Just as some men cannot handle it.
I agree.
Just as there are some women who cannot handle it. There are women who can handle it, and there are men who can handle it.
There are very few women who can. A lot of men can. So very few women who can. But a lot of men can.
What statistic or what percentage of women who cannot handle the military?
Yeah, so when they had to, we have such little data on, for example, the standards in the Army where you had to do a certain amount of pull-ups, certain amount of push-ups, certain amount of sit-ups. You had to do your run, depending on the year, how many miles, you had to meet a certain time. Single-digit percentage of women who could make it. Okay?
What is that number, though?
So the number was between 1 and 5.
Okay.
Okay. But it's a really small sample pool because to get women in combat roles, it only started when they immediately lowered the PT requirements. So we lowered them to the point where, okay, no more push-ups. For example, in the Army, no more pull-ups at all. You could do a leg tuck. Mm-hmm. Too many women failed that, so they could do a plank. In the Marines, women can do half as many pull-ups, achieve a perfect score. And then what happened is a lot of women were complaining because they felt singled out, because they had a standard for men and they had a standard for women, and women were still failing. So they created a gender-neutral test. That was the same test for men and women, kind of between the two standards, which I disagree with. I think it should be the higher standard. Less than 10% of men failed, 65% of women failed. So 55 to 65% failed a gender-neutral test designed to accommodate women. There is no way to lower the standards anymore and still have women in physical combat roles. We have lowered the standards of physical combat readiness to a degree that frankly is embarrassing to accommodate women, and the majority of them still fail. And assuming that I'm not lying, right, and I would encourage you to go do the research on the PT requirements, sounds to me like you and I agree. Sounds to me like you and I agree there should be one standard. It should be a stringent standard, right, because they're going out to war. And if you're a man and you fail, you don't make it. And if you're a woman and you fail, you don't make it. Will we both agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I just think that...
But that's not the law. We have a separate standard for women, and it's much, much lower, which I would argue is sexist. So we both agree. The only issue is I think you're not fully familiar with the new military policy. You disagree with military policy, and so do I. I think we would be in the same boat, saying, well, why are we having separate standards?
I just think it's where you single out, be like, well, women.
Because it's a different standard for women.
My thing is like this: if it's someone's dream to serve their country, but let's not just talk about the military. Let's talk about the police force.
Sure.
There are a lot, especially in Dallas, Denton County. There are a lot of women in the police force.
Sure.
That have made it through, become chief, have
lower standards.
I don't think so.
Yes.
Because.
But if they are, you can say you don't think so, but respectfully, if it is the fact, and you're looking and going, hey, there's a male police officer and there's a female police officer, but she only has to be half as capable, that's a problem. It's not an accomplishment. I don't care if it's her dream. She's going to run into a guy my size on PCP. She'll get hurt. And statistically, she is more likely to get hurt. That's my issue. They're more and the guy next to her is more likely to be hurt.
I don't think, this is my thing, I don't think that it should be someone else. Now, if the government makes a ruling saying whatever, that's fine. But I don't think as people in a society where our police force or our military is being questioned, rather they're men or women, I think that you should stand by that person. Be like, if a woman in the military or the police force is there and you see something going on, okay, that's their job, for one. That's their job. They get paid to do that. So it's not, I don't think that it's you have the right to think whatever you want, but I don't think you should be able to really question whether that person is doing their job capable when you haven't put yourself on that line or have not experienced what they're doing. It doesn't matter.
Objectively, they're not as qualified.
And objectively,
that's not me calling their character into question.
I don't think you're right.
But you just agreed with me that we should have the same standard.
I believe that
we should have the same standard.
Yes.
The police force, we should have a lower standard for women?
There is no lower standard.
There is. We're not going to have a conversation if you just say reality isn't reality. That's reality.
Then show me the statistics. That's my thing. I'm not going to believe a single word you're saying until I see the paper or I see the statistics in front of my face.
Okay.
So.
All right. And we have them, the third-party references, but these are all linking. You can see kind of where they're linking to as far as studies. All right. So the Army scrapped the gender-neutral test due to women failing at 6 times higher rate than men. You can find this at U.S. News and Committee later. You can find the studies. Okay. The Army eliminated pull-ups in 1980, sit-ups in 2020, push-ups in 2020. Females can do half as many pull-ups to get a perfect score in the military. Integrated units. All male units demonstrated higher performance levels on 93 of 134 compared to gender-integrated units. Gender-integrated units performed better than male units on only 2 events. I actually need to correct myself because earlier I think I said 4 events. I was overly generous. Increased violence. And this is something where you can actually find, it's tough with police, unlike the military, with police forces because it's more municipal. So they have different databases, so give me some grace for that. Increasing the number of female officers by 1 percentage point increases the number of assaults on police by 15 to 19%.
Okay.
So this is what we're coming down to. These numbers are irrefutable. We have the physical standard numbers. We also have the bone mineral density numbers. We have the fact that women, unfortunately, suffer bone fractures at a much higher rate in the military, and that women, and also their brother in arms, the men near them, are more likely to be the victim of violent attack.
Okay.
And a big part of that is because criminals know, unfortunately, they can overpower women because male criminals are often stronger than women, especially when you add to the component illegal stimulants. And that leaves everyone less safe. So these are the stats, and they will be made publicly available, assuming that I am not lying and that we have a double standard and one that is incredibly low for women to meet. Assuming that this is true, you now have the stats in front of your face. We agreed before that it should be one standard and you either meet it or you don't.
Yes.
Do we still both agree on that?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I want to see legislatively, because right now it's not. Right now there's a double standard, one for men, one for women. And I think, I don't know if you've ever competed in athletics at all.
Yes.
What sports did you?
Volleyball and soccer.
Did you have knee surgeries?
Nope.
Oh, good, you're lucky. Every girl I know who did volleyball have had horrible knee surgeries. It's tough on the body. It's not easy. It's an incredibly difficult sport. When we look, for example, at sports, obviously there's a difference between men and women. Would we agree there's a reason that they're separated?
I mean, I've competed in co-ed and I've competed in just female sports. And honestly, the co-ed one, for me, A, was more fun. B, I feel like with sports is different because, at least with soccer, for example, women are very more competitive, at least from when I played. And it's very, very much just like football for men, soccer is very much a contact sport for females, and it's very rough playing out there.
Yeah, the women's national team, they lose to high school boys every year.
Like the U.S. national team of soccer.
Yes.
The one
to high school boys.
The one that got a world championship before
Yes.
the men.
They lose to high school boys.
Okay. I haven't seen it, but
now take
if
that
you show it,
and add guns and perps on PCP.
If you show it to me, then I'll see it.
Oh, sure. Just search women's national soccer team. Do you want me to do it? If you bring it up on your phone.
I don't have my phone on me.
Okay. I'm sure I can bring it up. Women's national soccer team. So it's just, and I appreciate you asking. I'm glad that you're actually questioning it, but I don't know if I have good reception here. So look, you can see me typing this in.
Yes.
Women's, I'll just type in soccer team. Soccer team, high school boys, okay? If we have reception here. FC Dallas under 15 boys squad, this is from CBS Sports, beat the U.S. women's national team.
Okay.
And this is not a singular event, it occurs all the time. Now, they still are impressive for women, but they're not men. They're not even high school boys. Take that, add the consequences of death or subduing a man here, for example, in an area of Dallas, late at night. That's catastrophic for women. I don't think that's progress. And I think we agree, I just want the policy to reflect that. We should have standards that are difficult, right, that are certainly high if we're talking about people in physical roles that require physically extraordinary capabilities. Whether you're a man or a woman, you pass it, or you don't. And then we would look at the real world data and see how it plays out there in the field. That is all I'm asking. Right now, we are doing the opposite of that as a matter of policy. And that leads to, unfortunately, women in compromised situations and the victims of violence.
I guess my question is, in this argument, because I've heard, not just you, and I'm not trying to just base your argument off other arguments that I've had.
No,
with other
I
people.
understand.
But when I hear some of these other arguments, it's in the betterment of women, or in a kind of a sexist role, women shouldn't be in these roles because it is a man's job. Why, I guess, besides the statistics and besides you feel like women get hurt and men get hurt, what is the true point of this?
No, I don't feel they do.
We could disagree or agree.
No, we can't
with that
disagree.
one.
Just like we can't disagree that 15-year-old boys beat the women's national team. There's no disagreement. It's the truth.
I don't. Anyway,
Well, you told me you didn't think it was true.
okay. Are you gonna let me finish?
Well, I know, but I'm saying
I
there's
know.
disagreeing and there's truth, right? We need to agree on objective
I
truth.
let you speak.
Go ahead.
Okay, you showed me the statistics. You showed me the soccer. It's on the news. It's on public information where I can go look it up and go see.
Sure.
I'm not disagreeing that.
Okay.
But besides the point of those statistics, what is it? Just the biological anatomy of women that you believe that should not be in combat? Rather, it's like you said their bone density, they're more. You said something
Strength, bone density, endurance, anaerobic capacity, ability to perform reflexively under stress. Any physical metric that you can use to apply to the most effective fighting force, the vast majority of women fail miserably in comparison to men.
And what does that compare to other countries?
I haven't looked up all of the other countries, but if you believe that, for example, a Lithuanian woman is much stronger than an American woman and the men are weaker and that differential is closed, I would be very hard pressed to believe it.
No, because I'm saying like you have the statistics for our military. Have you done your research on our military versus other military, either women or men?
Well, it's a very large sample size, so why would that change anything? And
No,
as it
I'm
relates
just
to our
saying-
military, I think the stats are enough. Reality is enough.
I'm saying like comparative to English military, where they have women in combat too.
Yeah.
I'm guessing where I'm saying is where does that stand?
It's the same rule. I would say you still need to have the same
No,
standards.
I'm not saying the different standards, or I'm saying like statistically, where are they at? Where you do your research and you comparatively compare it to others.
Yeah.
That's where That's where my question is.
Yeah,
It's
I would
like-
imagine that they also have lowered their physical standards. They either have a lower standard for women or they've created a gender-neutral test so women can pass. And I would be willing to bet my life that far fewer women pass than men on standards of physical rigor across the world.
Well, maybe you should do your research and compare it to the United States. That's my only thing. Is like when people give these statistics.
Well, because I'm dealing with American policy.
I know, but
And we agree on the American policy
Yes.
being silly.
Having
a lower standard for women
I
is
said
wrong.
that there should be one standard.
Right.
We agree on that. I don't think it's silly. Now, yes, I think there should be reform. Yes, but rather that reform comes in the next 5 years or so, we don't know. Statistically, what you've shown me, it looks like yes, we need to reform sooner than later, but that's not up to us.
Yes, it is. It's exactly up to us. It's exactly up to us. That's my point. It's up to you.
You don't have to get close. That's
It's up to both of us.
Okay.
You're an American citizen.
Yeah.
You can vote. I can vote. Right? The policy right now is lower standards for women because the government believes that women are so incapable they need to have such low physical standards applied. So if you disagree with that, then I think it is up to us.
I mean, like, yes, but is it up to enforce it? That's up to the top people. That's them. And rather they see the statistics or not and decide to put that on the ballot,
They
whatever.
won't unless they have to answer to you and me. That's why I'm doing this. I don't believe that we should just defer to the elites in power. I don't know if you know, but the elites in power have done horrible things. They've been racist. They actually have been sexist. I would argue their military standards now are sexist. It only changes from the ground up. We have to hold them accountable. They're not going to be held accountable until people like you and myself, if we agree on something, make sure that it's heard. And they have to listen. It is up to us. I think that's important because a lot of students here seem to have a disconnect that, no, those are those people in power.
But you also have to think, some of us just came from high school. So,
Sure.
And some of us are just now turning 18 where we can't vote. So there is a disconnect.
Sure.
And that's where a lot of things also is education-wise. There's not a lot of education on policies, political things.
It's very apparent on campus.
So there's a lot of things that just not this one subject that needs to be talked about. I believe that there's more important things than can women be in combat that we need to focus on, like schooling. Like, let's make sure that kids have meals. Let's make sure that kids are all getting the same education. before we start talking about other things.
Well, I've done many of these, and we have done them on school choice, for example. I'm a huge supporter of school choice and school vouchers. We have done them on abortion. We have done them on gender. We've done them on a multitude of topics. We have done them on gun rights. This is just one today that is relevant.
I get it. It's just one today. But I'm just saying, like, I just believe, like, I believe, like, the way that it's phrased, I think it could be phrased better. But, I mean, it is what it is. But like we said, we can disagree on policies need to be all across the board.
Well, I think we agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
I said
That's
agree.
common
I meant
ground
to
there.
agree.
Yeah. No.
But yes, I believe that that it should be across the board. As far as the choice, that's.
Well, I don't think there's any choice. The test is what it is. It's blind.
But I'm saying, but if women want to be in combat, that's their choice.
Not if they don't pass the test. You can't maintain both of those positions. You can't say there should be a standard, they have to pass it, and then say, or it's their choice. Then why have a test? You're saying if they pass the test?
Yes, that's what I meant.
Okay.
If they pass the test, that's their choice.
Then it's their choice. I agree.
If they decide to, you know what, combat's not for me, whatever. Because there's so
Sure.
many men who do the same thing.
Yes.
So I'm like.
But if they pass the test?
Yes.
If they don't, they don't have a
Yes.
choice. It's like,
Yes.
you're out.
But I'm like, there's so many different things in the military, whether you say Army, Marines, whatever. There's so many different tests that they have to take, rather it's...
And different roles, by the way.
Yes.
To be clear, I think that I am not saying that women should not be in the military, and I think I've been clear,
'Cause
or in the
that's
police
what
force. I don't
think-
want them to be in a situation where they will encounter physical violence if they're not physically capable. Women can be detectives, they can be interrogators, they can be negotiators, they can do fantastic work with intel, they can be operating drones, they can be pilots. I'm just talking about roles that have physical standards or did for a reason.
So do you think the same way when it comes to operating like a gun or any type of...
No, here's the thing. I think that I actually am a huge advocate of women carrying firearms. I think that women should, because it's the one thing that actually makes you stronger than a man. It's an equalizer. If a man is attempting to rape a woman, sexually assault or overpower a woman, her best chance is to carry a firearm. The flip side of that is why I want female police officers to have to meet the same standards as men, because if they're not physically capable, they have to go to their gun, right? If it's a big, strong man on drugs, her only option is her gun. For the same reason, I think it's good for you to have an unfair advantage in day-to-day life if someone breaks into your house. Women should have guns. Police officers need to be ultra physically capable so that they don't have to use their guns, so that they can de-escalate, so we have less police brutality. I want fewer police having to use their firearms or use their taser as possible.
But in the same case of when you say that, yes, like when you say bring up police brutality, but I see, as a black person, I see more men grabbing the white police officer men, grabbing their guns when it's in defense of a black person, whether it's a woman or a man.
Yeah, it's a topic for another day, but statistically, yeah, it's actually, when you're talking about armed white men are actually more likely to be shot by officers than black men. But we've done a whole table on that.
That's a different thing.
Yes, but either way, I think we would both agree it would be
one standard.
It would be ideal
Yes.
that a police officer is capable in de-escalation,
Yes.
right, psychologically and physically, so they can subdue someone without having to use a gun.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think for me, my opinion is regardless if it's a police officer, regardless if it's a man or a woman, if I see a badge, if I see the uniform, I'm gonna go to them for help. That's one thing. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. That's honestly one thing that I don't care about. I don't care. Now, yes, I would hope that their training has been enough to where they are capable, if I am getting attacked, that they can help me fight off an attacker or whatever. But as far as that, I think right now, until policies change, until we, like you said, everyone votes and makes their decision on where they stand.
Sure.
Until then, I feel like there should be one thing of, okay, just because she's a female does not mean that she cannot help me. And I think that's where
I never said that.
And no, not you, but I think I've heard that from some other guys or some other men who are like, well, she's a female officer, or they're a female officer. That I don't think they're still doing their job.
I don't think they're saying she's a female, and I'll leave you with this. I don't think they're saying she's a female officer. She can't help me. I think what people are saying is she's a female officer. She did not have to meet the same physical requirements. Ooh, it's a roll of the dice. I don't know how much she's going to be able to help me, and that's based on a reality. And I think that is horrible, because women will forever be held in doubt because of the diversity hire and the double standard. For the same reason that affirmative action in college is a problem, because unfortunately people will go, does that person deserve to be here, or is it an affirmative action result? And I think that that's the bigotry of low expectations. And yeah, unfortunately it harms women, and unfortunately in a lot of these situations they harm people of color. And I think that the tests need to be blind. We need to have a standardized test, regardless of race or gender. If you pass, great. And of course, I think we should respect everyone who's out there who's serving, who's doing their job honestly. If they're a police officer, I wouldn't denigrate or disrespect them. I agree with you on that. Thank you so much, though. I appreciate you sitting down, and I do like the sweater. Go listen. They have some great albums. If you haven't listened to them, I think you might like them.
I have to do homework. So.
Oh, I'm not saying right now, but thank you very much, Anaya.
Yes, Anaya.
Got it. So see, it's always hard to have a discussion when the opposing point of view insists that your research is simply made up, and it's why it's always valuable to have the references and make them available, which, by the way, you can go see for yourselves at louderwithkreider.com. Also, ladies, small bit of advice, take it or leave it. When your loving father suggests that you do something like research your AC/DC sweater, not a bad idea to listen to him. Dads tend to know best, especially when it comes to music from their era. Okay, let's bring this tugboat to shore and see if we can finish this on a high note. Oh, yeah, we have two lovely ladies here, Jewel and Caitlin. I don't know how familiar you are at all with what we do with these segments, these Change My Mind. It's hopefully a way where people can kind of rationalize their positions on sometimes controversial topics. Yeah, I don't believe that women should be in combat roles, and like you mentioned, police officer roles, if it's a role that includes violence or the possibility of being physically overpowered, or enlisted forces roles, because of the fact that it makes not only women unsafe who are in the line of fire, but also their brothers in arms less safe. I think there are a multitude of ways that women can serve in the military and in the police force, but those that require extraordinary physical capabilities are not amongst them. And if you disagree with that, I'd be more than happy to hear why, and you change my mind.
Well, I'm not really the type of person to be like, what you think is like wrong and what I think is right. Like, I'm open to hearing other people's like perspectives on things. I'm not really like, no, you think we don't think the same, you're wrong, you know?
Oh, great.
So what I'm like hearing from you is like, I'm not necessarily hearing like women are better or men are better and women aren't. It's just like the physical attributes of what's different.
Yes.
So, okay, you saying by like they shouldn't be in physical roles, how do you think like that? Do you think like, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Do you think that women can, I don't know, work up to being physically capable? Like.
So yeah, and that's something that I kind of expect people to bring up. Statistically, very unlikely, and that's the reason for this topic. Is we've created different tests since the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, where we've reduced the physical requirements to try and accommodate women, and they still fail at a rate that's significantly higher than men, several multiples higher than men. They even just created a gender-neutral test in the Army that they now have to scrap because less than 10% of men were failing, but 65% of women were failing. And these are tests that no longer include pull-ups, push-ups. And if you look at the results, once they get out into the field of battle, women get hurt a lot more, and members of their squad get hurt a lot more. They suffer bone fracture rates at several times, multiple rate. They get disability discharges, 65% more than men. In the police force, they're far more likely in their whole squad to be violently attacked if there's a woman there, and in large part it's because this is a role that requires physical capabilities. So if we're saying if women could meet those standards, yeah, my position, I would agree with you if it's we raise it to the highest standards that we've had, keep those, and women who can meet those, sure. But that's not what we're doing.
Right.
I think it's inherently sexist to keep lowering the physical standards to try and accommodate women in combat roles, even though they still keep failing, and it ends up putting them in harm's way.
I had a question, I forgot it.
Do you think that, what are you, what's your goal here? What are you trying to accomplish here? With this?
Well, I think this is a goal, and these Change My Mind started out actually just me kind of on the street with a sign.
Okay.
And then we had a couple on campus. And then it became very apparent that no one on campus was hearing these perspectives. For example, we've done them on gender, we've done them on gun rights, we've done them on abortion. So it's really just hopefully for the student body to no longer be a monolith and hear different perspectives, because this is a pretty important conversation.
I do agree. I do agree that the body was genetically not made for that kind of thing, resulting back to very old times, women were never made to do that, the men would do that, or the men would go to fire or whatever, and the women would cook or clean or whatever, that kind of thing. So
I'm not saying that women have to, just to be clear, I'm not saying women have to cook or clean. There's no reason that a woman, for example, in the police can't be a detective can't be a forensic investigator. There's some data that suggests they might be better. They might be better interrogators, actually. So I have no problem with that. I have a problem with putting women, and we are doing this, in combat roles where not only they are more likely to be hurt, but their brothers in arms are more likely to be hurt as a result of someone who's unqualified being put on the force. Okay. So I'm not saying they should be at home cooking or cleaning. There are many, many ways that women can serve in the military and the police force.
Just not physically. I agree.
So like, is this topic coming from you from a place of I think men are better and women are less inferior, or where is it coming from?
No.
Standpoint?
Look, men are not superior to women, and women are not superior to men. We're different.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're doing any great service to young women by telling them that they can do anything a man can do. They can't. Just like we're telling young men that men can get pregnant too. I don't believe they can.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Well, we've done that topic as well, and we've had people say that I'm transphobic for suggesting that. And I think that there are roles in which women serve valuably, and they have in the military and in the police force. But I think this idea that everyone has to be equal on all fronts I really think it's harmful.
I honestly agree, because like recently, like with the whole like the gender topic and everything, like there's been a lot of topic of some like feminist women being like we scientifically don't necessarily need men anymore for what they add to like creating children and everything like that. Like it can genetically create like children for women and put them in their bellies and everything in a lab, But then if you think about it and you look at the bigger picture, like in the trades field, most of the trades workers are men.
Yeah.
If you look at what they're doing in the oil field, welding, all types of construction work, all types of that, like I'm not saying women can't do it. Like if you want to do it, you just have to work 10 times harder, but that's something if you want to do, you can do. But if you look at it, like most women wouldn't pick to do that. And if you get rid of men, who would be doing that?
Who would make up 93% of all the workplace deaths?
Who would have built the building behind us? Who would fix like the World Trade Center when that happened? Like most of the firefighters and the police officers and everything were men,
right? Saving
people's lives and everything like that.
Yeah.
I just feel like God made a man and woman for one reason. Men are supposed to do this. Women are built to do this, and I do agree that men are more physically capable.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
What do you think about? It sounds like we found quite a bit of common ground. Most people aren't aware, but what do you think about the fact that we've continually lowered physical requirements for the military so that women can meet them?
I feel like putting our men out there with a lower physical requirement, it makes it easier for people to get in who may not be able to fight as well, or be physically inclined enough to go out there and fight the war. If they lower that standard, it should be set at a standard that all of them should be able to just fit in that same category. Whereas if they keep on lowering it, it just makes our men out there weaker and weaker. So.
Yeah.
I think that like changing the whole requirements and everything like that, it's given people the mindset of I can do this now because it's changed. When I feel like if they would have just left it alone and they would have left it at the same, you have to do this A, B, or C or you can't get in,
Yeah.
If they would have just left it at that, there are some badass women that could have done it and they could have gotten in, I'm not saying it's a large percentage or a small percentage or anything, but I am saying there are some women that could do it, and then that would just make it even more rewarding. I feel like everybody gets the same opportunity nowadays when necessarily they don't deserve that. They don't work as hard. They can't physically do it, I know for a fact if I tried right now to go join the military, I would not get in.
No.
Absolutely not,
Well,
and I don't think it's fair that...
I would correct you. It's not that it's not fair, it's that it's not right. Because people do this because they say it's fair, but when we go into that, a lot of people don't know this. For example, in the Marines, a woman can do half as many pull-ups as a man and get a perfect score. I don't think that's fair. No. I think it needs to be the same standard because it may seem unfair, but it's what's right.
It's not.
But it shouldn't be the same standard because that lowers the standard for the man.
Exactly.
Right. Well, if that's the thing, is it's not the same. In the Marines, they don't have a gender-neutral test. In the Marines, a man has to do twice as many pull-ups to get a perfect score. So a woman can do half and get a perfect score, but they're out there in the same battlefield, fighting the same enemy.
Yeah, that's very true.
And I know that I've been accused, and I will continue to be accused of sexism and maintaining my position, but
No,
I just don't
agree.
want to see a woman who can't do pull-ups out there get her head caved in, you know, because she's not qualified to be there.
Right.
It comes with deadly ramifications, but I think
It does come from also like a different like mental state as well.
that's true.
That plays a big role.
Women are far
into
more
it.
likely actually to experience like PTSD,
Exactly.
be discharged for that. And that's not to say that women are mentally weaker, it's to say that women are mentally, I would argue, more adept at other situations that men wouldn't handle very well.
Exactly.
Going out there with a gun and fighting terrorists where you're not able to shower and you're not eating for days is one of those where test after test shows that men perform better.
For that. Yeah, for sure.
But not when it comes to making sure that, you know, as you mentioned, like children are taken care of. I mean, I'm a new dad. Basically, all I do for the first year is make sure they don't die. I'm pretty much useless.
Right.
They don't really need me.
Yeah.
So I think
I think it has
different.
a lot to do with the genetic makeup in general. Like, it just results all the way back to the genetic makeup. Like, that's just how a man is built and how a woman is built. Like, I just feel like physically men are way more inclined than women.
Do you think most women on this campus would agree with your position?
Absolutely. not.
Absolutely not.
Why not?
It's a women's university. They're very,
Well,
very...
I know what you're saying, but explain what that means.
People here are very,
I would say liberal.
Mm,
Was it liberal?
maybe not liberal per se.
Maybe, I don't know.
Just
I don't
because, I don't know, I would say more like,
Crazy?
more emotionally in touch
People are
with,
sensitive.
Yeah, like more emotionally in touch with like,
Who would have expected that at a women's university?
they're just a lot more, I don't know, I guess just like, and more emotionally involved with these kind of things, like, oh, that's it. They're going to tell you that you're sexist, and they're like, oh, you know, people come here like, women can do anything, you know, like, yeah, sure, women can do anything, but that doesn't mean that we're not genetically made to not be.
Women can't do anything though.
So like,
Nor can men. I don't know what that's. Men can't give
Men
birth.
can't have
and
children.
statistically,
I mean, there's just so
women
many
can't do
things.
pull-ups.
yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that a man is made for versus a woman, and people don't see the difference in that. Like people here.
It's just
like,
because of the generation we're growing up in and the generation we're becoming.
Do you have these? So you say that your position might be less than popular on a campus like this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because women, for the same reason, they're more agreeable, right? Women tend to be nicer. They don't tend to be as confrontational. Do you have these conversations? Do you challenge your female classmates when these topics come up, or do you just kind
I
of
feel
try and
like I
sidestep
kind of
them?
don't associate myself with. I don't do it on
we already know.
purpose.
It's like you already know how the conversation is gonna go. So it's like on a topic like this, it's like you just like, again, like my opinions are my opinions, your opinions are your opinions. People are too sensitive nowadays to be like, well, your opinion's wrong. No, my opinion isn't wrong. We're different people. That's just how it
Can
goes.
I present something to you, just as a thought?
Yeah.
Because first off, I think that you've presented yourselves well.
Thank you.
And you've rationalized your positions well.
Thank you.
But I would say this. You saying that's your opinion and this is my opinion, that's very respectful, but here's the problem. The people with these other opinions who you're talking about on campus, they are the ones determining legislation.
Very
because
true.
often people like you, I don't mean that in a denigrating way, being respectful, you decide, well, live and let live. But these other people don't.
That's very true.
They are pushing it legislatively to the point where
They want-
children
they
are
want-
allowed
they
on
want
puberty
to
blockers.
believe
And
the
so
same thing,
That's
yeah.
very true.
I'm told, right, no vagina, no opinion. Even though women obviously have opinions
Yeah.
on men's issues all the time, we need women like you having those conversations and making sure that you can kind of push back on the legislative process, because it is dominated by the kinds of people who you're mentioning on
I
this
feel
campus.
like
very
I
true.
kind of gravitate towards people who think the same as me. Like for some, I don't do it on purpose. Just like I just kind of feel like
The whole confrontation thing is just something you try to avoid.
It's
when you have
exhausting.
yeah, exactly.
I'm a very confrontational person, and if
Yes,
someone
I
were
am
to
too.
come to me and say,
and tell me
well,
my opinion's wrong, I'd be like, well,
a man can get pregnant, like
absolutely no.
or like I can turn into a guy if I want to. Like I just don't think that is physically.
Okay. All I ask is that you have those conversations here on campus, because unfortunately, you know, women, I say this, there's no group of people, maybe black Americans, who are more overly represented in the media, but whose voice is actually completely unrepresented than women. Because everyone sees women, they assume, right, that when they talk about women voting, it's pro Roe v. Wade, pro LGBTQ in women's sports, pro-progressivism as opposed to any type of traditional gender roles. And that doesn't mean that they're fixed, but meaning that recognizing the differences between men and women. It's assumed that women are a monolith. And unfortunately, I think a big part of it is because women like you are nice, which is you still be nice, but don't be afraid to speak out.
Very true.
Right.
Because I'm sure you feel it, right? I'm sure you feel a little bit of that tension to speak out, and maybe you'll be ostracized, right? There is some pressure, I'd imagine.
There
Especially
is some
here,
pressure.
you know, like everybody I feel like thinks one way.
Right.
And I went to a different university. I'm a transfer student. So I
Okay.
went to Howard Payne University in Brownwood, Texas. I don't know if you know where that is, but do you know where Tarleton is?
Where, Tarleton?
Tarleton is?
No.
Well, it's in Stephenville. And
Oh,
so
yeah, sorry.
Brownwood is an hour away. And the campus and the campus life and the community, completely different. If you were to have this same conversation there, you would get completely different answers, and it would honestly be less controversial there. But the majority of students are male students that are white.
I would say, though,
And
having done
women
this,
that are-
that's actually never been the case, because even if, let's say, the student body is more varied in their points of view, it ends up being a few people who dominate the
Oh
conversation
yeah, because they're
on any
not.
campus.
They're the ones that want the confrontation that have a different view.
Yes. Yeah. So, well, thank you very much. I'm sorry, your names again were?
My name's Caitlin.
Caitlin.
My name's Jewel.
Jewel, thank you for
Thank
sitting
you
down. I
so
hope I
much.
clarified the
Thank
position.
you.
I really appreciate you taking the time.